Imagine waking up every day knowing that today you might die. Not metaphorically, literally. Imagine your name, your history, your identity reduced to a number. And in that world of starvation, cold, and cruelty, a man discovers something more powerful than fear. He discovers meaning. This isn't a story about suffering. This is a story about why, despite everything, despite the unthinkable, life is still worth saying yes to. What if the strength you're searching for isn't outside you, but hidden deep in the pain you're trying to escape? Stay with me. Because Viktor Frankl didn't just survive a concentration camp. He uncovered a truth that could completely change the way you see your own life.
Hello, everyone. Hi, all, and welcome to Book Podcast Some.
I'm Emma.
And I'm John.
So today's deep dive is a little different. It's incredibly specific.
It really is. We're not just talking about Frankl's work in general, which, is already so well known.
No, we're going deeper. We're essentially performing an autopsy, if you were, on a piece of profound knowledge. We have this blueprint, this source template for a chapter X. It's called Yes to Life.
And our mission really is to get under the hood and understand the structure of it all. How do you actually do it?
Exactly. How do you take the heaviest topic imaginable, suffering, meaning, and distill it into something that someone today, a modern learner, can grasp instantly?
And not just grasp, but have it be impactful,
Yeah.
unforgettable.
Right.
That's the real challenge, because you, the listener, you're looking for knowledge that sticks. And what this framework shows us is that even with something as heavy as existential philosophy, structure is everything.
Structure is destiny. That's a great way to put it. So we're reverse engineering impact.
We are. We're looking at the architecture that forces you to confront Frankl's big idea, that saying yes to life isn't just a nice thought. It's a choice.
A non-negotiable choice.
Even after you've been through the absolute worst the world can throw at you.
So it's the art of taking this historical trauma and making it into an immediate, actionable insight for right now.
It's about dissecting the machine that turns the survival story into a universal life lesson. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. The hook. The blueprint is very clear. It skips all the background, all the history, and jumps right to this reversal.
Imagine walking out of hell itself and choosing to say yes to life anyway.
So why do that? Why lead with such an extreme contradiction? Why not, set the scene first? Give us some context.
Well, it's a deliberate strategy. It's about creating immediate emotional intensity. It's a high contrast opening.
High contrast. I like that.
Think about it. If you start with definitions or historical facts, you're inviting the listener to just sit back and observe, to be passive.
Like you're in a lecture hall.
Exactly. But by starting with this juxtaposition of hell, which is total involuntary suffering, and the yes, which is this act of radical voluntary choice, you instantly create this friction, this tension.
And it makes you ask, wait a minute, how is that even possible?
Right. And in that moment, you're not a passive observer anymore. You're engaged. You have to know the answer.
It's so powerful because it kind of short circuits our usual resistance. The excuses we make for our own smaller problems.
How so?
Well, if the person who has suffered the absolute most can still choose yes, then any objection I might have, based on my bad day or my tough week, it sort of evaporates.
It loses all its power. You've set the emotional stakes at the absolute maximum from line one. There's nowhere to hide from it.
It's irrevocable.
And notice the specific wording there. Choosing to say yes. The template is so precise. The big deal isn't just that he survived.
Right. Survival was forced on him. It was a biological imperative.
Exactly. Survival is reactive. It's that primal drive. The real insight, the whole point, comes from the active voluntary choice after the survival part is over.
So the yes is proactive. It's a commitment.
It's an ethical and psychological commitment to finding a purpose. The framework makes sure that you, the audience, see that the power isn't just in enduring something terrible.
It's in what you do with that endurance afterwards.
Yes. Frankl reframed the entire horror.
Yeah.
It wasn't just an endpoint, a trauma to get over. It was a crucible, a place where something new was forged.
Let's dig into that idea of walking out of hell. That phrase implies such a dramatic shift, a change in consciousness. For years, every single second was just about not dying.
Just preserving physical life.
And then you walk out. And that walk is a transition, isn't it? From forced existence to voluntary affirmation, where your life is now for something more than just staying alive.
And the template demands that this discovery of meaning is presented as a kind of epiphany. an instant life-altering shift.
Stepping into the moment, everything changed.
Right. Now, we know that in reality, integrating trauma and building a philosophy is a long, slow, painful process. It takes years.
Of course.
But for a story, for a chapter that needs to have impact, you need an anchor point, a single crystallizing moment. It's the difference between saying, well, Frankl gradually came to the conclusion that...
Which is dry, academic.
Very. Versus telling the story of, say, that one evening, marching in the snow, he suddenly pictured his wife's face. And in that instant, he understood that love was the ultimate goal.
That emotional gateway is everything for the listener. You need to feel that click of understanding.
And that sudden transformation, even if it's a bit of a narrative construction, it validates everything that comes next. It's the emotional proof for the intellectual argument that follows.
If the idea is powerful enough to change a life from the inside out in a single moment, then it must be true.
And you see this structure everywhere in the American narrative landscape. We love a transformation arc.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, think about recovery programs. The entire story isn't just about the long, slow process of getting sober.
No, it's always built around rock bottom.
Exactly. The bottoming out. That moment of absolute crisis, that's the hell. And it's followed by the decisive, often sudden, choice to get help. That's the yes.
You see it in every startup story out of Silicon Valley, too. It's never about slow, steady growth.
Yeah.
It's always about the spectacular failure, the first company that went bankrupt. The bigger the failure, the deeper the hell, the more inspiring the comeback story, the yes, becomes.
The bigger the abyss, the more impressive the bridge you build over it. The template is tapping into that deep-seated need for a story of radical transformation born from radical adversity.
So the hook is basically an emotional proof of concept. Before we even learn the name of his therapy, logotherapy, we've seen proof that it works in the most extreme case imaginable.
You've secured the emotional buy-in. Only then can the intellectual work actually begin.
Okay, so that brings us to the next part of the framework. After the hook, it insists on this. One dramatic, relatable moment from the chapter told like a story, never dry summary.
And this is where the big abstract ideas get grounded in cold, hard physical reality. That instruction, never dry summary, is, I think, the most important part of the whole thing.
Why do you say that?
Because without some kind of visceral proof, existential philosophy is it's just a set of nice-sounding propositions.
It's just words.
Just words. Frankl's idea about the last of the human freedoms, the freedom of attitude, that's a pretty abstract concept, right?
Very.
But it becomes real. It becomes undeniable when you see a character, maybe Frankl himself, performing a specific defiant act. Maybe quietly sharing his tiny piece of bread with someone who's worse off.
Or finding a moment of internal peace while being forced to dig a frozen trench.
Yes. Those concepts are just too heavy, too profound, without a small human-sized story to put them in.
The template is basically protecting the message. That one story, that moment, it becomes the living, breathing evidence for the theory.
It does. When you hear that story, you feel the cold, you see the impossible choice being made, and then when the philosophical points come later, you believe them because you've already seen them in action.
You witnessed them.
It's what keeps the whole thing from turning into an audio textbook.
Let's talk about that word relatable. I mean, how can an experience in a concentration camp be relatable to someone, living a comfortable life in a U.S. suburb today?
That's the key question. And the answer is that the template demands a very specific kind of story. The shared experience isn't the camp itself. It's not the starvation or the cruelty.
So what is it?
It's the moment of humanity that breaks through the inhumanity. The relatability is in the memory of a loved one's face suddenly appearing in your mind's eye.
Or a sudden, breathtaking glimpse of a sunset over the barbed wire.
Yes, exactly. A moment of beauty that has no business being there. That specific, transcendent moment is relatable because it's about our shared internal freedom. The ability we all have to focus our minds on something higher than our immediate situation.
So it's not relating to the suffering, but to the response to the suffering.
That's it. And that one single moment has to do a lot of heavy lifting. It's the anchor point. Every philosophical idea that comes in the next section has to be proven true by this one story.
If the story is just, kind of interesting but doesn't hit you in the gut,
then the analysis that follows, no matter how brilliant, will just feel like empty intellectualizing. It won't land.
The template is built for impact. And impact comes from the senses. You have to describe the way the thin soup tasted, the feeling of the frozen mud, the specific shade of gray of the sky.
Those details are what turn a historical fact that you know in your head into an emotional memory that you feel in your body.
So let's apply this. How does this play out in modern U.S. storytelling? I'm thinking of journalism or documentaries.
It's the exact same principle. Let's say you're doing a piece on the national homelessness crisis. You could start with the statistics, right? Hundreds of thousands of people, percentages, charts.
And people's eyes would just glaze over. It's data. Data makes you concerned, maybe, but it rarely makes you feel anything. It doesn't move you to act.
Right. So the structural requirement of this template demands a pivot. And forget the national statistics for a moment. Start with a single, highly specific story.
Tell me about one person.
Exactly. Tell me about the single mother in Chicago, sleeping in her car with her 2 kids during a polar vortex. Tell me about the specific moment a stranger knocked on her car window. Not with suspicion, but with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a blanket.
That one moment of connection.
That's the story. That specific interaction on that one brutally cold night, that's what activates the empathy you need to even begin to understand the abstract concept of the crisis.
It connects the giant, overwhelming data point to a single human heart. The framework demands that the story of one person's suffering and their one moment of grace is more important than the aggregated data of thousands.
It humanizes the problem, and it makes the potential solutions feel tangible, because you've seen the idea in action.
But that raises a question, doesn't it? If you focus so much on one dramatic turning point, are you oversimplifying the truth? Is there a risk of, I don't know, romanticizing the suffering just to get to that philosophical breakthrough?
That is an excellent point, and it's a very real risk. I think the blueprint has to accept that risk in order to achieve its goal, which is resonance.
So how does it balance that?
It trusts the analysis that comes next to add the nuance back in. The story is the emotional hook. It pulls you in. But the philosophical pillars that follow, they provide the intellectual rigor. It's a 1-2 punch.
Emotional immediacy first, then intellectual depth.
Exactly. The structure ensures that later, when you're trying to remember Frankl's ideas, you don't just recall the definition of logotherapy, you remember the image. The man staring at a single flower growing by the barracks.
That's the mechanism for deep, lasting retention. That brings us to the end of our analysis of this incredible framework for Chapter X. If you found this discussion insightful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share for more updates on how we break down the world's most important ideas. We are just getting started, so now we get to the real meat of it, the part where the knowledge is actually transferred. The template takes Frankl's really complex, interconnected philosophy and organizes it into this very clean 3-part structure.
The 3 pillars of insight, and each one has a very specific job to do. One is for accessibility, one for challenge, and one for long-term integration.
It's the key, really, to making the knowledge fast, thorough, and easy to retrieve later.
It's a formula for retention and application. It stops the whole philosophy from just becoming this one big, overwhelming blob of an idea in your mind. It forces you to organize the knowledge in a way that makes it easy to grasp, internalize, and then, actually use.
Okay, so let's break them down. Pillar 1. The template says this has to be in human language.
This is the on-ramp, the entry point. The instruction is explicit, no clinical jargon. We can mention logotherapy, sure, but only to explain that it's all built on this one really radical idea.
Which is that we humans are primarily driven by something non-material.
Exactly. It's the point that has to challenge our modern obsession with comfort and happiness. If we were writing this chapter, this is where we'd confront that whole cultural assumption that all we really want is pleasure or power.
So the simplest, most universal lesson is something like, life's main motivation isn't chasing happiness. It's searching for meaning.
And that reframing is everything. It uses simple human language to push back against a deeply ingrained cultural belief. He called it the will to meaning. And it was his direct challenge to Freud's will to pleasure.
By putting it so simply, it becomes a mirror. You immediately see your own restlessness, that dissatisfaction you feel, even when things are supposedly good.
You see it reflected in that statement. It gives you a clean, accessible name for that deep existential ache.
It really sets the philosophical foundation, especially in the U.S., where so much of our culture and marketing equate buying things with being happy. This simple statement is like a profound counter-argument.
It tells you that the reason you might feel empty despite all your success is because you've been aiming at the wrong target the whole time. The whole goal of this first pillar is just that immediate aha moment, the simple truth that clicks.
And if you only remember one thing from the whole deep dive, this should be it.
Right. It's the foundation you need to handle the harder truths that are coming next.
Okay, which brings us to pillar 2. Point 2 that hits harder than it should. This is where the friction comes in.
This is the challenge. We said that true insight is rarely comfortable, and this point is designed to challenge our most comfortable beliefs. The ones rooted in blaming our circumstances or feeling like a victim.
This is where radical responsibility comes onto the stage.
It is. If point one established what we're all looking for, meaning, then point two establishes the terrifying cost of actually finding it.
And for Frankl, that hard truth is all about agency. It's the idea that everything can be taken from you, your home, your health, your loved ones. But there's one thing that can never be taken.
The last of the human freedoms.
The power to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances.
And that just hits so hard because it completely removes the escape hatch of blame.
There are no excuses left.
None. It forces you to look inward. And it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? On one hand, it's incredibly liberating. It means you are sovereign, you are free, even in a prison.
But it's also a huge burden, because it means you can't blame the economy or your boss or your past for the attitude you choose to have right now in this moment.
Let's really dig into how challenging that is, especially in our modern U.S. context. I mean, we live in a time where, for very good reasons, there's a huge focus on external factors.
Right. Social structures, systemic issues, environmental problems, and we need to focus on those things to make the world better.
We absolutely do. But this template insists on introducing the other side of the coin, the difficult internal reality of personal agency. The hard truth here is that even when the system is against you, even when the environment is hostile, you, the self, you remain in charge of your psychological and spiritual response.
It's the difference between saying my circumstances cause my suffering versus saying my circumstances reveal my choice.
And that is a world of difference. The first one can lead to a feeling of helplessness. The second one demands radical empowerment. The blueprint knows that for an idea to really change your behavior, it has to challenge you first.
It's like intellectual whiplash.
That's a great way to put it. You get drawn in with a comforting idea of seeking meaning, and then bam, you're hit with the seriousness of what that actually requires. This search isn't passive. It's a demanding, moment-to-moment job of governing your own inner world.
Okay, so that leads us to the third and final pillar, the one you'll think about at 2 a.m.
This is the real test of success, isn't it? Resonance. Does the idea stick around? Does it pop into your head in the quiet hours when all your defenses are down?
This point has to be about applying the philosophy. It has to connect to real-life choices and your sense of purpose.
The 2 a.m. thought is the idea becoming your conscience. It's the truth that starts to guide your actions when nobody's watching. It has to bridge that gap between the big, abstract idea of meaning and your own unique personal purpose.
So we've established we have to seek meaning. That's pillar one. And that we're radically responsible for our attitude, pillar two. So what does pillar three do?
Pillar 3 specifies the outcome. It says, meaning isn't generic. It's not one size fits all. It has to be discovered by you specifically.
For your unique work, your specific relationship.
Or the unique way you choose to face the suffering that only you have to face.
This is the integration step. If pillar 2 challenged your sense of agency, pillar 3 challenges your sense of specificity. It's asking a very direct question.
A very personal one. What is your unique assignment? What task is waiting for you? What meaning can only you bring into the world based on your unique situation?
It moves you from being a passive learner, just consuming information, to being an active participant. You're not just hearing about how Frankl found his meaning. You're being forced to start defining your own.
Right now. In your life as it is, the template ensures the conversation doesn't end when the audio does. That lingering 2 a.m. question.
Yeah.
That's the real measure of success.
So the structure, accessible, challenging, and then integrated is the key. It's how you make these huge existential ideas digestible, actionable, and, well, unforgettable.
Exactly. It's how you ensure the knowledge is durable.
So now we have to get to the part of template that demands proof. It says how this actually plays out in real life today, 2025. Modern example, no academic jargon, just real people, real pain, real hope.
Right. This is critical. We have to show that this wisdom, forged in the literal hell of the past, still works. That it's powerful enough to address the more existential hells of modern American life.
The disconnect, the anxiety, the constant pressure to perform.
The principles don't change, but the pain has to be recognizable to a modern audience. We have to translate the pain of, say, physical starvation into the pain of burnout, the pain of the cold into the pain of digital alienation.
The gnawing feeling of inadequacy that's just so pervasive in our culture.
Exactly. We have to demonstrate the concepts, choice, responsibility, purpose in scenarios where the suffering is maybe less physical, but just as real.
Okay, let's start with a big one. The burnout crisis. It's an epidemic in white-collar America. Let's create a character, a high-achieving, say, project manager at a big tech firm in a city like Austin or San Francisco.
Okay, so she has the six-figure salary, the impressive job title, maybe a great apartment with a view. She has all the external signs of success.
But she's miserable, completely fried, working 70, 80 hours a week, feeling totally empty inside.
Her hell, in this context, is that relentless chase for external validation. The pain is the feeling of being just a cog in a machine, of having your life force drained away for a quarterly growth metric that feels completely meaningless to you.
And the relatable moment. Maybe it's her staring at her laptop screen at 11 p.m., another deadline looming, and just realizing none of this effort is serving any real internal purpose. It's just feeding an endless corporate machine.
Okay, so how does Frankl's framework help her? We apply the 3 pillars. First, she has to recognize she's been chasing happiness through success. That's the counter thesis to pillar 1. The framework tells her to stop and ask, where's the meaning?
And that first step is huge. Just realizing you've been aiming at the wrong target.
Then comes pillar 2, the hard truth. This is the emotional challenge. She cannot control the market. She can't control the unrealistic expectations of her boss or the pace of the industry.
Those things are external. They are her given circumstances.
Right. But she can control her attitude toward her work. She can choose to find meaning within the tasks she's already doing.
So what does that look like, practically?
Maybe it means choosing to find deep value in mentoring a junior employee on her team. Or taking an extra hour to ensure the product they're building is genuinely helpful and ethical, not just profitable.
Or using her position as a manager to create a healthier, more supportive environment for her team, even if it means her own personal productivity metrics dip slightly.
Exactly. That's the existential shift. She moves her focus from the outcome, the bonus, the promotion, which are externally controlled, to the process, the quality and integrity of her actions, which are internally controlled.
So the real hope isn't necessarily about quitting her job. It's about completely reframing her relationship to the suffering of her job. She stops being a passive victim of the system.
And becomes an active agent, choosing how to act with meaning within that system. The parallel is perfect.
What?
She can't control the market, just as Frankl couldn't control the camp guards. But the freedom to choose her attitude, that is functionally identical.
Wow. Okay, let's take a different example, a different kind of pressure. Modern parenting in the U.S.
Oh, that's a deep well of anxiety. The pressure to ensure your kids succeed.
It's immense. The fear-based focus on external achievements, getting them into the right school, the right travel sports team, loading up their schedules with activities like they're building a resume at age 8.
And this leads to total parental burnout, financial stress, and this constant humming anxiety.
The hell here is the fear of failure, the feeling that you're not doing enough, especially when you look at what other families are posting on social media.
And the relatable moment could be that parent sitting in the car, exhausted after driving to the third activity of the day, and realizing that their actions, all driven by fear, are actually undermining the very values they want to teach, like patience and connection.
So how does Frankl's framework offer a way out?
Well, it provides a powerful counter-narrative. It says the meaning isn't found in your child's eventual success, the college acceptance letter, the trophy. The meaning is found in the parent's daily acts of unconditional love and responsibility.
It's in the process, not the outcome again.
Again. Pillar 1 asks, are you chasing happiness through your child's report card? Or are you finding meaning in the quality of your relationship? Then Pillar 2, the hard truth. You cannot control the world, and you ultimately can't control your child's choices.
But you can control the values you model every day, the attitude you take when they fail a test or miss a goal.
And that brings us to Pillar 3, the 2 a.m. thought for the parent. What is the unique meaning I am tasked with fulfilling right now with this unique child in front of me? It shifts the focus from trying to engineer a perfect adult
To being fully present in the moral and spiritual growth of the child they have today. The yes to life becomes choosing to define success on your own terms, inside your own home.
It's a path out of that anxiety spiral. It's a return to internal values over external performance.
Okay, one more. This one's tougher. Let's talk about community-level suffering, something we see all too often in the U.S. a localized traumatic event.
Like a mass shooting in a community, or a devastating natural disaster, like a tornado that levels a small town in the Midwest. A sudden, shared, absolute hell.
How does this framework apply when the suffering is so collective and so acute?
This is where you see yes to life demonstrated most visibly through what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. It's basically logotherapy in action on a community scale.
The first response is just grief, shock, chaos.
Total existential disorientation. The moment of transformation, the walkout from that immediate chaos, is when the community makes a collective choice. A choice to engage in healing, in rebuilding, in advocacy.
Despite the grief.
Despite the debilitating grief. The framework gives them the philosophical license for that choice. They can't undo the tornado. They can't bring people back. That's the uncontrollable circumstance.
But they can choose their attitude toward their shared grief. That's pillar 2. They can define a new purpose, a new meaning, not by trying to forget the pain, but by actively transforming it.
And that transformation becomes action. They advocate for better warning systems. They establish community support centers. They build memorials that are not just about loss, but about resilience.
They use the shared trauma not as a reason to despair, but as a catalyst for collective responsibility.
This is the highest expression of it. The pain isn't denied. It's leveraged into creating new value, like rebuilding the town, and into attitudinal value, the moral conviction to make things better for the future. The depth of the meaning they find is directly proportional to the depth of the suffering they chose to transform.
It shows that Frankl's choice isn't some historical artifact. It's a living, breathing framework for overcoming any kind of hell we face today.
We've laid out this powerful case for the framework, but every good storyteller knows you can't tie everything up in a neat bow. The blueprint is very specific about this. It demands one lingering question that teases the next chapter.
Right, this is so important for the listener's journey. You can't let them feel like the book is closed.
If you give them all the answers, the learning stops. By ending with a really compelling unanswered question, you turn this deep dive into just the beginning of their own reflection.
And the question can't undermine what we've just established. It has to complicate it.
Exactly. We've just spent all this time establishing the radical power of individual choice, of internal freedom. If we just end there, it might sound a little too simple, a little too easy to dismiss for someone facing massive external barriers.
So the lingering question has to introduce that nuance. We focus so much on internal agency, so the complication has to be about the limits of that freedom.
So the hypothetical question pushes us into the realm of those big structural forces we've been talking about. Something like, okay, we've established the power of the will to meaning. But in a world with real systemic poverty, with deep historical injustice and entrenched oppression.
At what point does the demand to find meaning become an unreachable or maybe even a cruel demand?
Yes. And how do we ethically reconcile our internal freedom with very real external chains?
That question immediately respects the listener's intelligence. It says, yes, this philosophical framework is incredibly powerful, but we know it has to operate in the messy, unfair reality of the world.
It acknowledges that internal liberation does not and should not replace the fight for external justice. It validates the tension the listener probably already feels.
I know I have a choice in my attitude, but I also know my options are severely limited by my circumstances.
And the lingering question says, yes, you're right to feel that tension. And we're going to explore that next. It turns passive learning into active philosophical wrestling.
It's an intellectual bridge to the next stage of the inquiry.
So, to just kind of pull it all together, the genius of this framework for presenting Frankl's work is that it understands that impact requires a kind of purposeful translation.
It's not enough for the idea to be profound. It has to be accessible.
Right. His historical truth is first translated into a dramatic, visceral story. Then it's distilled into a challenging but memorable philosophy with those 3 pillars.
And finally, it's grounded in our modern, messy reality with real-world examples.
Yeah.
The whole structure is just engineered for maximum resonance.
It teaches us that great ideas aren't just discovered. They have to be designed for accessibility and durability. They have to survive the hell of academic jargon and come out the other side as clear, actionable truths.
We analyzed a framework that really centers on radical responsibility, that conscious, non-negotiable choice to say yes, even when everything in you wants to say no. And that leaves us with our final thought for you, building on this theme. We've seen again and again that the strength you might be searching for is often hidden deep in the very pain you're trying to escape. So, the question to leave you with is this: what specific pain in your own life are you currently avoiding? that might just contain your most necessary meaning.
We encourage you to not only seek out these kinds of profound ideas, but to start critically evaluating the structure of the information you consume. Look for the sources that give you truth, with both emotional honesty and intellectual rigor.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the structure of meaning.
Until next